Hi, I'm James Mullins, and I want to take a moment and try to talk to you about some things that you might be running into, some problems that you might be having right now um, that relate to management, and give you some ideas of how you might be able to improve those problems. You might be asking, why should I listen to you about management, and what experience do you have? So before I get into the topic, I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I was in management for 10 plus years, so I have a lot of management experience, and I've started my own business, so I have business management experience, and I have some insight that I want to share as far as managing your employees in ways that you might be able to help and develop yourself and develop your team. I started a fitness business so that I could help with problem solving. It's what drives me, it's my passion, and really what I like to do is try to help people try to find ways to solve problems and look for different ways to explore and different solutions. So it's the thing that I enjoy the most, and I want to try to do that in the management field as I go too. So I'm just trying to share some of the knowledge and experience I have, and just trying to share knowledge and make sure that I'm giving resources out to people. All right, the topics I want to talk about today is if you're in management right now, it's the holiday season, so you're probably having a lot of new people who are coming in to help with the holidays, and your current team is probably feeling a little overwhelmed and probably starting to run into some problems, and maybe they're having some morale issues. So when I was in management, I was in retail management for my management career, and we would run into this frequently during the holidays. So I thought I would try to give some insight and information for anyone who might be going through that. And that's what the Semper Management thing is all about. Is I just want to try to share some of the knowledge I had, and give some information that might be helpful to other people. As you can see, I have up here new team and current team. First, I'm going to talk about the current team and some problems they might be running into, and some ways that you might be able to identify some things with them and help them. This comes out of this little quadrant comes out of a old human relations book I have from a sociology class, and it's actually called the Employee Responses to Dissatisfaction. Now, it only has exit, voice, neglect, and loyalty on their 4 quadrants. It has it set up for destructive or constructive, passive, and active. So it has those 4 quadrants set up. Now, what I've actually seen from my experience is it's not just those 4 quadrants. I actually think that the voice can be both negative and positive. I think that the loyalty can be both negative and positive, and I'll get into some of that in a minute. So I actually added some stuff to this. I'm trying to take my own experiences and put them into the practice of this quadrant scheme in order to give you some ideas of how you can help and work with your team. So right now, it being the holiday season, your current team might have a bigger workload. They might have new team members who are working with them, and they might have a lot going on. So if you are starting to see any types of morale issues, or you're starting to see any change in your team, and you probably will, then you need to try to identify that early, and you need to try to find ways to correct that and make sure that everything is staying positive. If you look at our quadrant here, you can see we have constructive and destructive. So if you're looking at your team and you're looking at a specific player on that team, are they doing constructive things or are they doing destructive things? And are they actively doing them or are they passively doing them? What you want all your employees to be will be an active, constructive person. So if you look on here, we have exit, voice, neglect, and loyalty. So we'll talk about exit last, and we'll talk about loyalty first. So if it's a loyal employee, it's going to be someone who believes in the company, believes in the goals, and is striving to be better in all those goals. It's the type of employee that you want to have, but they lack voice. So the ideal active, constructive employee would have loyalty and a voice, and the quadrant just assumes that if they have a voice that they're loyal and that they're active and constructive. So I didn't include loyalty there. The voice aspect just automatically assumes that they have the loyalty, whether it be positive or negative. You want your employees to be loyal. The problem with being loyal and not being vocal is it's a passive way of doing your job. So loyalty is good, it's constructive, that's why it's in the constructive quadrant, and that's fine. But ideally, you would want an employee that has a voice, is vocal, is pushing the goals, is trying to communicate with the team, and trying to improve. So if you have someone who would be in the loyalty quadrant down here, you need to try to work with them to make sure that they have a voice and that they're adding to the team and that they're trying to bring something to the table as far as development. If you have someone who's loyalty, and this is why I put it on the negative side too, is you can have someone who's loyal to the team, but maybe not the organization. So they could be loyal to other team members who are neglectful or who have a negative attitude. And if they are, then that loyalty could be destructive. It's going to be passive because it's not vocal. But if they're just following the destructive nature of an employee because they're loyal to them, then it's going to cause problems. And you want to make sure that the loyalty is falling on the constructive side and is following the organization goals and not the employees. We would run into this on occasion where the employee might have a negative mindset and they might be vocal about it, which is going to get into our voice a little bit. So before I move on with loyalty, let's talk about the voice part. So if you have an employee who is vocal and they're trying to communicate goals, they're trying to communicate with other team members, and they don't care to have a voice, then you need to make sure that that is constructive. Anytime that anything negative happens and it's picked up on by the team, if they have a negative voice, then it's going to aid in all of the destructive aspects of the job. So if people are loyal to that person, their negative voice is going to affect, even though they're passive in being loyal, they're still going to be destructive. So if you have someone who's very good friends with a team member and they are loyal to them, then just that team member having a negative voice, having a negative outlook can have a destructive result for your company. The more people that they can voice their opinions to, the more people that they show concern to, the bigger problem you're going to have, which is why it's so important for management to be on the same page as the organization and everyone be going toward a constructive goal. If you have any destructive comments, any destructive voice, then it's going to make loyal people go toward the destructive side. And what normally happens is they'll do it through neglect, and the neglect part can be either someone who is actively having a voice and neglecting, or it could be someone who maybe isn't as vocal, but just isn't doing the things that they're supposed to do at their job. Either one is going to be destructive, but the most destructive person in your organization is going to be someone who is neglectful with a voice and is actually trying to get other people to be neglectful also, or just setting that example. So you don't want someone who is very vocal about the negativity. That's something that you need to stop early on. So if you are having a problem with an employee at this point in the year, then you need to try to identify that and make sure that you're going toward the constructive phase. So if they have a voice, if they're being vocal, if you hear any negativity, then you would be well suited to take them aside, try to identify what problems they're having, and get that negativity turned toward a positive state so that it's more constructive. Because any negative voice can aid into the many different destructive personality traits that you could have that's going to hurt your organization. So the only one we have left to talk about with our current team would be exit. And on the quadrant, they had exit for just the active and destructive because they're actively leaving. Now, I think that someone exiting can be a negative or a positive. It depends on the employee. If it is someone who performs well, you obviously don't want them to leave, and you don't want them to be active in that. You would prefer that they would have a voice first, and that you could talk to them, try to find out what's going on with their situation, and resolve the issue. So if it's a good employee, then the exit, of course, would be destructive for the organization. However, I think if you have this person who's vocal, neglectful, and has a loyal following that they're continuing to build, I used to call it like a cancer in our organization, that they are a problem, and if you can get them to exit or you remove them from the situation, that it can actually be an active and a constructive thing for your store. So these are some different ways that I try to look at things as far as the team. I thought this was a good visual example to try to show you that if you have someone who's vocal, if you have someone who voices their displeasure with the store, with the organization, any policies, how it can actually be a very big problem, and it can make people it can lead people who might not be vocal to be passive and neglectful, which is just going to aid in the problem. So it's very important to make sure you have a pulse of your team and that you're trying to identify those with your current team. At this point in the year, I think a lot of organizations are going through this just because of the stress involved with this point in the year. So please make sure you're looking at your current team and you're trying to find ways to keep them on board, to find out what they're going through, and make sure you're identifying any problems. Now for the new team, the reason I want to talk about the current team first is the current team is going to play a big part in making sure that your new team is being accepted and performing optimally. So with our new team, we're going to have people who may not have ever worked in our job field before, and in order to get them on board and make sure that they aren't having the destructive portion of this quadrant, but they're always constructive, then we need to do a few things. First off, we need to make them feel significant. I think that a lot of companies struggle with this. They don't make their new employees or their seasonal or part-time employees feel significant. And if you don't do that from the beginning, from the very beginning, if you don't make them feel like their input or their performance is a significant contributor to the goals of the company, then you're going to run into problems later, because then you're going to have to try to convince them to do their job well, but you're doing that without them feeling like their contributions matter. So something that I always tried to do with our team is anytime we brought them in, we had a meeting before the shift, and we would always talk about the goals for the shift, and I would talk about their specific aspects and how they played a role in us hitting our end goal. So even though they were only playing a portion of the total idea of the goals, they knew that their portion was significant and an important part of us reaching our overall goal. So that's first off, is make every employee feel significant, even the new ones. If you can do that, then if you're selling credits, if you're selling whatever you're selling from a selling standpoint, that the metrics and the numbers that you might have to worry about, they're going to know those are more important just from the beginning, and you're making them feel like they're a significant part in that. Also, the second thing you want to do is find ways to empower and allow creativity, especially with newer, with younger employees. A lot of experience now, everyone is taught, given a participation trophy, they're given gold stars, consistently. So we have to find ways to make sure we're empowering those people and allowing them to be creative. So any way that you can give them some responsibility, if it is someone who is working in a specific section, if you can allow them to have some responsibility there. If it was someone with customers, allowing them to have some responsibility with the customer service. Any way that you can find to allow them to have some type of power, empower them in some way in order to help see that they make a difference, they're significant, and they play a role in getting the results. So it's hard to do that and still follow some of the procedures and guidelines that we have, but any way you can find to empower an employee will be helpful. Also with creativity, some of the top companies, they'll have a day where they just let people do whatever they want to that day as far as their projects, and allow creativity. Like they can work on anything they want that specific day as long as they're working on something. So they kind of break the guidelines and let them do whatever, and that seems to be the most productive day for those companies. They flourish more in that day because people can think outside the box and do different things. So if you can allow ways to get creativity, then it's going to help build the relationships, but it's also going to help people feel involved and like they have a voice. And last, find the language of communication. Later I'll talk about a book called Languages of Love, which is a really good book, and it talks about identifying how you can show appreciation for people. But you need to try to find the language of communication, or the language to show appreciation to the new team. And a lot of that's just going to be through observation, but I always tried to make sure that I was asking people, where they're from, where they grew up, different things like that in order to try to communicate. And then you can kind of see if people are introverted or extroverted and what type of personality they have. And through observation, you can see if they're more hands-on and other things like that. But if you can find ways to communicate with people and find out what drives them, then it's going to help you make sure that you have a voice with them. So all of these things are going to apply to making sure that your employees have a voice, that they have a good relationship, and they feel comfortable coming up to you, and making sure that there's a good back and forth relationship, and that everyone's working toward the same goals. Now, it's really hard to do this at this point in the year where everyone's busy, but these are both very important things in the development of your store or your organization. So I thought that this was some beneficial content, some things that I was thinking about that actually related to some of the things I went through at this point in the year. Just wanted to share it with you guys. So I am trying to put together some more content like this. I'll put it out for you. I also have a Facebook group that I've started that is just for management, and it's going to have a lot more stuff like this. I'm going to do a webinar once a week, and if you've ever heard of a mastermind, it's going to be a mastermind group just for problem solving. Like I said, I love this stuff. This is the stuff that drives me, that I really find interesting, and I want to do more of it. So if you're interested in participating in the group, just send me an instant message, or contact me via email, and we'll have a conversation. It is a paid group. I want people who will participate, people who are active, and people who really care about this stuff the same way that I do. So you can, like I said, feel free to contact me if you're interested in the group. Love to have you in it, and we'll build from there.